just want to make sure I can see it. Go to sequence 1. 1 second. Start at 1. Okay. So at the heart of Carbon, you have a 64-step sequencer. You get 6 of those. So right now I'm just going to use the first one for demonstration purposes. A few different modes that you have, like arpeggiation and live. So I guess we'll start with the outputs. On the back, you've got 4 CV outs, 4 gate outs, clock out, reset out. The 2 MIDI outs are recognized as 2 discrete MIDI devices, so you have 32 channels of MIDI output there, as well as you have this USB host. So if you have a class-compliant USB to MIDI device, you can add 16 more channels that are all addressable from the menu of MIDI for a total of 48 MIDI channels on output, plus the 4 CVs. But right now we're just using the USB host to host this computer, or this keyboard, which the keyboard is handy for things like, for instance, if you're not in run mode and you hit record, you start to do a step edit. And you can add spaces to your step edit by just twisting the start knob. So if we clear that pattern and start it, this is how you kind of draw your own patterns. So we'll start by recording a few spaces, and we're making our own pattern. So I'm just going to clear that. One of my favorite things too is, so you have a scale quantizer built right in, and that's in the tonality menu. So you can see there pentatonic, diminished, etc., etc. Here's harmonic minor. So now that quantization is set, if I hit shift and direction, it hits the magic button. So what that does is it spits 64 note values across the sequence, and they're all within that quantized parameter. So then it's like kind of instant music. So after you have your 64 steps there, you can start overlaying gate patterns. And so what this does is it's rhythmic variation for the same note values that are in those 64 parameters, or the note values, whatever. And then you can start overlaying these gate patterns, and that step record was how you create your own gate pattern that I was showing you. A few cool things, so like as your sequence is running, you can just hit live to interrupt it if you want to play your keyboard and turn it off. You have 6-note polyphony per step. So when you arpeggiate, you can arpeggiate all 6 notes per step, and there's like a ratcheting kind of menu for how fast you want them to arpeggiate and so on. Another cool feature is the bias tracking. So in the tonality menu, if you go over to, I'm just changing the scale, there you go, bias track disabled, you can go to bias track 2, and now what's happening is track 2 is now modulating the transposition of track 1. I'm just going to disable that just so I don't get confused, and the fact that you can do that over and over and over, so we can have, like, you know, track 3 bias track 2 and track 6 bias track 3 and so on and so forth. You can start to create these like exponentially growing patterns that just go on for forever. A few cool features like tap tempo. You got clock division, separate clock divisions for each track. You'll notice here there's like a meta view for each track where you can see which track you're editing by the highlighted bar underneath it, and it just shows you like the status and position of each sequence. Cool things like you can adjust the length of your sequence. Oh, sorry, I'm still in the menu to adjust the note length. So you can adjust the length of your sequence. So you can also, like, when you get into modulating, you know, track 1 is going to be a 15-step sequence modulated by like a 7-step sequence and so on and so forth, where you get those like kind of offsetting numbers where the set doesn't repeat for a very long time. So you can do some cool stuff that way. So you can also variable track length and variable start position. So once you get that going with like these gate overlay patterns, you start to kind of have that like with that magic thing, you have like all these quantized parameters, and you just kind of get these instant music, like where you're just generating who knows what, but it's always going to be in the scale, and it's like it just kind of is always evolving and morphing, stays with itself. So I was saying about the art, you have 6 MIDI messages that you can output per step. So when you go to step edit, you can see the 6 slots. Right now there's just one because it's monophonic, and it tells you the velocity, like there's E5 is the note, 116 velocity, and you can edit all of those parameters like step by step. What else haven't I touched down on yet? Oh, cool thing. So in song mode, you can start an events list, and you can do up to 127 events per song. But you also have this scene mode, which is cool. So if instead of wanting to like compile a list, which isn't as much fun, and you want to just do your arrangement on the fly, and you want like track 1 to represent, say, your intro, and track 2 is your verse, and track 3 is your chorus, and track 4 is your middle 8, and so on. You just hold down scene, and that's just going to actually act as though all of these different sequences are going to come out the same kind of output and control and basically be like a live arranger. We are tossing around the idea of being able to have the live arrangement that you're playing compile to an events list, so you can like always replicate it, or / just arrange your event list without having to program it. What else do we got on here? So in the MIDI implementation, you have program changes available, program A and program B. There's where you have your out port assigned, so right now it's MIDI DIN 1, and we could go to MIDI DIN 2 or the CV gate outs and so on. You also have the USB host output available, which is when you plug in your USB like MIDI converter, your output, then you can select which channels over 16 channels over the USB host as well.
Yeah.
What else is in that MIDI? Output A, output B, out channels, key split, which is really handy, velocity scaling, and MIDI remote control. Tap tempo's on there. What else haven't I touched down on yet? We talked about the arpeggiator. Yeah, I don't know. I think that I'm running out of things to think about talking. Oh, variable gate time, which is really nice. Super simple. Real like instant transposition for your entire I believe this one's for each track. There are 2 different ways you can transpose. You can transpose each track individually, or you can transpose the master.
Cool.
Yeah. That's all I can really think about right now. Oh, so, and also there's a few cool things like the reset is important. So like if you're going to go through and like change.
Right. And that'll put your step right back at the beginning of the sequence.
Well, it'll put all of the sequences back to the first step.
Right.
So sometimes like if you're going to change the division value, say, on the fly, suddenly that might create like the reset to happen at different steps or like unintentional steps. So you just hit the reset and everything will go back to 1, which is nice and easy. What else? Oh yeah, swing is available, 50 to 80%. What else do we got? I talked about the bias tracking. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good like kind of rundown of the features.
Pretty rad. Thanks, dude.
Yeah, of course.
You want to do me a quick favor and just say your name?
Oh, my name is Niles Mystic on behalf of Kilpatrick Audio here at Knobcon 5. Thanks, Foxtone.
Cool.